Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We have a quote today. Here it is.
I hope to be so successful in life that I can once again enjoy some of my vices that I've given up.
Sir Andrew Berman has spoken.
I haven't
Welcome
been
to the
knighted
culture.
yet.
Well, you have by the Culture Matters podcast as of
Oh,
today. Um, Before I reintroduce our guest, here's another quote just for this episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Standing up meant standing alone. Standing up meant having a real relationship with right or wrong while being aware which side of the fence you stood on in every way. We can't stand up when we are standing down. We can't be warriors in life for others when we stand down. We can't change the hardships of our own life or others if we stand down. We can't be free if we stand down. The list of losses and potential deficits brought on by standing down is huge and frightens many from standing up. Page 139. Our dear friend, Christine Beckwith's Finding Honor, The Journey to the Truth. The person who actually introduced our guest and I over secret salad club slash potential Scientology audit meeting. That's an inside joke. Our guest today is not a Scientologist, but they are a great friend to the Culture Matters podcast. They have decades of experience within their bones and DNA and their culture in the mortgage industry and beyond into financial services and all things advisory, media. They're a friend of the Culture Matters podcast. They're one of the few resources that bring you, our listeners, quality guests to the Culture Matters podcast. Our friend Andrew Berman is back to make the Culture Matters podcast great again.
oh, thank you. Appreciate the introduction, the kudos there, and I take issue with that saying that it was never not great. So, um, and it is great to see the deluge of shows of episodes coming out.
Oh,
I'm
you
I'm back
noticed.
I'm backed up. Yeah, like I'm not listening to every one of them. I'm gonna be selective. I don't have enough time. It's amazing. So, no.
Oh, I really want to know, user experience, like what's going through your mind. Because like we've been constipated for so long. Now the plumbing is going, and so now the consumer maybe they're going to be constipated. So what as a consumer, when the pipes got unclogged, what did you think that first day? Except, do you get notified?
So every day, like when I go listen to like podcasts, I go to like latest episodes. Um, so and usually, like every, week or so, there would be a Culture Matters episode. So I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, and be able to kind of listen to it and or listen to m most of it. Um, but yeah, then actually like lately it's been a deluge of content. So I need to make like, Culture Matters Monday or something like that, and have like one day a week where I'm digging into it. And maybe I need to, like, I don't is there a way to listen at 3x? Like what
Yeah, I think
1.5x is not cutting it for me.
well, you'd have to go back to earlier your quote and just not say that again. Be on some kind of no, as far as I know, 2x is as fast as it goes. So think about that. I mean, if 4 episodes are out in a day, that could be 4 or 5 hours of content,
Yeah.
you know, in a day. Like um I do want to go back to the quote that I shared and ask you your thoughts before we go into uh, you know, adding commas, for example. If you're listening to this podcast right now, please follow Andrew Berman, our guest today, and take a look at his podcast, Adding Commas, which is about not only the success of the guest, but how they think and where they're thinking. This is my understanding of the show. I'd like your elaboration on it. Their vision and conceptualization around how they're going to get to the next level, or how they're going to grow to that next level awareness of their success, right? Adding commas, it's more than just whatever they've done to get successful. Is that going deep into their story? Is that adding
Yeah.
commas?
So yeah, and it's about it's going into the story. It's basically, I mean, it's right now focusing on mortgage, because that's, that's these are, if you look at all the people I know, the majority of like the most successful people that I consider, friends, and um they're people actually who have started, in mortgage. And I've learned, and it's become aware to me over, especially over like as we're digging into these episodes. I mean, I had this concept, and I'm like, wait, something? I think there's something here. I said, hey, let's create a podcast about this, because I think I believe, we'll be able to prove this by having these conversations. And fortunately, I've been 100% correct in my assumptions. Is that these mortgage people did amazing things, in their mortgage career, creating, good income, respectable net worth, but where they added commas, to their income or their net worth, or potentially, or their overall impact on society, was once they took that foundation of mortgage and added to that, and adding to that could be, starting coaching companies, insurance companies, breweries, other businesses, nonprofits, that drove their income, their assets, their net worth, and their overall impact. So it was, taking that foundation that you can create with mortgage, because in mortgage you can create a great income. And I believe the things that you learn from doing all these transactions, and plugging into the profit and loss of, basically, I look at a consumer is, as a business. A borrower is a business in itself. And oh, is that a pyramid? Oh yeah, yeah, I
I don't
like
know, like
this.
I drew it. Is that
Yeah.
just
Oh,
imagine a more
geez.
beautiful picture than that. But like
Oh,
the point
okay.
is,
I'm a screenshotting that right now, because this right there is going to be that's going to be used for our graphics. So
you think it
yes.
makes sense though, the idea?
Yeah, yeah, it's that mortgage is the foundation. and a very strong foundation that we build on top of it. This provides financial knowledge, understanding of basically finance, and then once you have that understanding, you can add other businesses from that. So yeah, that's great. This is why Jay's so amazing. This
So, added a couple more little squares. But if you're watching, if you're people are going to be able to watch this on YouTube. So that's in by very very soon. So that's it's not in vain what we're. If you're listening to this right now, go to the YouTube and type in this title. You can see what I was holding up there, a picture for your listenership. Um, what are some of the things you learned in the first few episodes of that stacking?
um I'm just trying to think of some of these stories here that we've learned, and not. I mean, because I have, I mean, Shane Kidwell, who we just interviewed last night, is just fresh on my mind, and I mean, he is one of the one of my favorite people in the mortgage business. But I mean, not just in the mortgage business. I mean, this is how we met, is in the mortgage business. But I mean, he's got a coaching program, he's got a co-working space. He's actually he's all in on mortgages. He does have a mortgage company, um, but when and this is something that did pick up from him, and really I've found from my other guests, um, it's seeking the advice of others. And whether it is using formal coaching relationships or mentorships. I mean, obviously, I feel that there's many ways that I've benefited from either mentors, in some cases even coaching, but there's definitely um, a very powerful impact of so far the guests that we've had, and just anyone I've ever interviewed or been connected with that has been successful. The reliance on coaches and mentors. It's something I think is one of the most impactful things to be able to add commas to your impact and your net worth and your income.
Why?
Why? I mean, because we only know what we know. We're not going to know what we don't know. We're not going to actually be able to see our blind spots, and even actually, the things that we know that maybe we're doing wrong. We just sometimes need someone to put us in check to remind us that, hey, maybe there's something here that we could fix or improve. Um, and the other thing, and this is something Shane talked about last night, was accountability. Having someone next to you, you're accountable. And so many of the coaches that I've seen, like they're like, even actually the bad ones still provide value because they provide some accountability, even if it's just telling you and reminding you every week to make your minimum calls, or do your standard activities, and just provide, making sure you stick to that. There's great value in that.
Bad coach. I want That's a good book title. But
Hmm.
what makes a bad coach?
Hey, I think what would make someone a bad coach? Okay, so I'm gonna say, I mean, bad. Let me when I say bad, I really mean more ineffective. I mean, bad coach would be someone who's not moving you in the right direction, giving you poor advice. But I think most successful people are going to be able to weed those people out. But um, I just think if it's someone that is maybe limiting, I'm just trying to think of a bad coach. A bad coach could be someone that's toxic. Um, I do have there was a guy that I met with few months ago, who wanted to work with us. He is a coach, and I looked at him. Obviously, everything for me and my work with Ambiz, it's focusing on two things: content and finding revenue opportunities. Um, and I just got this vibe that this person really has not been in the field, been connected to people who are successful in the field, because just because you're not writing loans doesn't mean that you can't provide amazing uh, wealth of information. But I think they were so disconnected from that, and just kind of uh, basically we're using old playbooks. While old playbooks certainly work, I've got a friend of mine who uh, write 100 loans this year by putting on a suit and bringing donuts to real estate offices. So there's nothing wrong with things that used to work, but basically, maybe it's taking that playbook and applying it to the wrong person. Someone who has maybe a personality who would work really well on video and in social media. And applying that playbook towards them. So
Mm.
that could potentially be a bad coach. You don't want someone who's taking um trying to figure out a sports analogy. I'm sure there's something with like a catcher being a pitcher or something like that, or maybe that might be going some other direction. But all right, I'm gonna end that thought.
This quote that on 139,
Yeah.
we have uh, it seems like we're at a place in the mortgage industry, um, where a lot of things are coming to a head, or there's a shift in the culture. So, what comes to mind when I shared that quote? Standing up meant standing alone. Standing up meant having a real relationship with right or wrong, while being aware of which side of the fence you sit on in every way. I ask myself, like, am I standing up or am I standing down? How do I stand up? What's
Well,
standing down? What's standing up?
so I mean, it's basically I go. I feel like if you're standing down and there's something you believe in, and you're not letting that something be heard by those who would be interested in what you're saying, or would be impacted, you are you're lying through omission. By not sharing your feelings, by not sharing something that's going on inside of you that's impacting you. So yeah, it's um standing down would potentially be lying, and lying as a leader just kind of erodes your foundation.
It's interesting. Right after that quote, it says, I stood down for a long time. I turned a blind eye to unsavory things. I did unsavory things in my day. It was easier to go along to get along. The roads of doing bad are riddled with people, while the paths to honesty are desolate and lonely. To move from one to the other, you must be willing to stand apart and stay strong. Be convicted in your word, and you an almighty powerful, become almighty powerful in your journey. I had false power. I thought money, prestige, titles, and awards made me powerful. I am decorated in this life, which proves I am worthy. I'm a worthy soldier. But the worth of leadership cannot be given. The worth of a following cannot be bought. Those who don't see you will stray. True fellowship comes from showing yourself nakedly. exposing your dim rights, letting the world view your scarred and broken truths, demerits, not dim rights. Can't even read, and having people stay with you anyway. When a man remains at your table when there is no food, you know you have a friend. It's a well written book. What do you think?
Um, um, so when you stand with someone, when you stand like so, if you stand down, um, or stand up for someone, you know, you stand for everything. You know, do you stand for like so like, and that's this is something that I think we wrestle with, and especially in today's in today what with what's going on in the industry that we do a lot of work in. Obviously we have an organization that's that is under attack. That is under attack because there's definitely some really not good things that they did, things that can be considered manipulative, um, but there's so much good that they did, and there's so much positive that they had actually on our industry, and because of that, they've indoctrinated so many people, into their way, but it's the battle and the struggle that we have that we have to face is that you know where you know where do you cut off from standing with bad actors, um when you start to see that maybe their foundation of where they came from is not as pure as you thought it was. This is the struggle that we all have, and then and then I guess you justify in your mind, am I standing up for the right thing, or should I, when do you say, hey, maybe I should be standing down, because the opposing parties, have a strong point, and have are being hurt, by who I'm standing with.
If we are going to engineer influence, we better be called to responsibility for that influence. Like we better have a calling of responsibility relative to that influence,
Hmm.
or the wrong people will be held to account. That's that institution, that government that has control over its people, that everybody else is at fault, like the people in the fields and under under the Great Famine in China, who if they took, and this is Soviet Union too, if they took like one grain of rice for themselves, they'd get prison sentences because it was supposed to go to the collective. If we're going to engineer influence, we better be called to responsibility relative to that degree of control, that degree of influence. that degree of authority, or our people will be held to account, at too great a cost. Because those in control, those in with influence and therefore control and authority, who are they accountable to? Who is the ownership of a private company held to account by? Who is the ownership of a public company without independent directors held to account by? Who? What is accountability?
Yeah.
I would argue accountability is taken or given. You give accountability with honesty, you take it with decision. Like, okay, you're not working out at the company. Here you go. It's time for you to leave. Taken, you know, given. Hey, I don't think you're doing your job. Or now this is the thing. If that's top down, it better be bottom up. And we hold our officials in account by voting. So it shows the decay of a culture when we don't believe our vote matters, because that means we don't. The accountability is top down and not bottom up. In a culture of business, the employees hold, like, the people hold the leadership accountable with their word, like what they feel they can say, what they actually say, and with their feet and their hands. Feet, are they leaving? They're leaving. They're deciding to leave. That's accountability. With their hands and their brains, are they productive? They're just coming in and leaving, like they don't really, doesn't bother them. They're telling us a story. They're holding us accountable. They're not producing at the capacity they could. Now, we might be so delusional in our power, we don't even realize how much value we're missing with our business because, well, and this is something I've witnessed, that type of ownership, they don't notice because they're not judging their success by profit. They're judging their success by revenue because they live off revenue. They don't even know what profit is because they consider all of it theirs. So their lifestyle hasn't changed because they're living off the top of the company, not the bottom of the company.
Yeah.
There's this huge difference in leadership between those that live off the bottom profit, and those that live off the top, the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an infant versus an adult as it relates to the journey of the entrepreneur. And in the defense of the infant, a founder is an infant. They're green. They're in transition. They haven't even had their surgery yet.
Yeah. Fair.
So it's a completely different paradigm. And you could have a company 50 years old and still be a founding spirit. You could have a company, you could be 78 years old and still be a founder and not a chief executive officer, psychologically, from an educational standpoint and a value standpoint, like not be the chief executive. You could just act like an omnipotent, all seeing, all knowing consciousness of the founding, the genesis, the progenitor, the godlike me, Leviathan of the organization, and be stuck in that. It's one of the reasons these investment firms, they take over the company. They immediately kill the founder. They crucify them. You know.
So what do you? So those of us, and I'm listen. I'm definitely I'm guilty of this. But when um NMP was under my leadership, it was top line growth. I mean, that's basically because like whatever, figure out whatever. Like I can control that. I can control what we're bringing in. And that's basically I guess my you know my levers that I would control and I would have easy control over. But what do you call? the those who are focused on the bottom line.
Well, stewards of, you know, shareholder value, you know, what the the ownership is held to account by the the marketplace.
Yeah.
They're held to account by the shareholders. They're held to account by their people. And the question I posed earlier is, what if there aren't any shareholders with external transparency? And what if we're not listening to our people? Well, then we're only held accountable by the marketplace. And that actually undermines the ownership, because being held to account by the shareholders and the people can actually help them get more profit, because we all have blind spots. There's another element. We're held to account by our third party vendors. So for relative to their to that interaction, that's why consultants exist. That's one of the values of external consultants. They help an organization not choke on its own exhaust. It's a third part. It's another mechanism to help the organization not lie to itself. That increases accountability. Like, hey, because it's outside, less strings attached. Example: somebody that works for an organization, I would argue from a power standpoint, they have one. Let's say they have one source of income.
Mhm.
It's scarier to tell the truth if it might hurt, if it might ruffle some feathers. Like, it's necessary, but it might. There's higher risk than if you're a consultant and you've got 100 clients.
Yep.
So just that power dynamic that emerges due to optionality makes that third party valuable to the institution. To answer your question, though, that would be quality management, steward, responsible leadership, ability to respond. Um, I would argue the distinction between the chief executive, like a chief executive, versus somebody in their basement in their diapers deciding to found an LLC,
I'm in my
which is
basement
how
right
we all
now.
start as a baby. I mean, Nietzsche said you got to crawl before you walk, walk before you run, run before you fly, fly before you dance. I'm pretty sure. So, like, we all start as infants, and as business owners, we start as infants too. We've got to grow up, and so if you're asking, like, what's that person called? A lot of different names, but that would be somebody that you would. I mean, I got this Buffett book next to me. You know, we trust that Buffett's going to show up to work today. He's not going to be golfing and spending the company's money on his, cocaine addiction. He's going to be doing something he enjoys that's congruent with our self interest. That I want my Class B shares to go up. I don't want them to go down. And so I'm gonna stay long in this holding of this stock, because I trust this guy's going to work and gonna have fun and do what he wants to do, and he's gonna add more value. What do you call that? A leader. Uh, you know, a leader you want to follow, not a leader you're afraid not to.
Hmm. Yep.
What do
Yep.
you? I'm excited we ended up on this. By the way, whose idea was to film this at 5:30? Like, I'm starting to wake
Uh,
up. Like,
yeah. Me mutual, I think. Listen, this is what we are going to be done, and and immersing ourselves in culture before hours before most people are wiping the eye snot out of their eyes on this beautiful Saturday morning. So, um, but This is what we
How do
do.
you feel after that?
After your
Like
feeling.
accomplishing something that you you think others, yeah, how do you feel after accomplishing something that stands out or, you know, could be different from the crowd or because I'll elaborate. Like, we're gonna finish this podcast, and it's a Saturday. Many people throughout the week have done have earned their, let's just say they've earned their right to rest, maybe even longer than they normally do. Let's say the subjectivity of that, they've I want to give them that, right? They've earned that, and
Yeah.
then maybe objectively, like based on just you know working really diligently all week, they've earned that too.
Bless you.
Yeah, thanks. Like, how do you feel? How do you feel? Accomplishing something that might stand out. Like,
I
how
mean,
are you gonna feel when we get off here? Is that gonna, you know, set
so
the tone for the rest of the day? Does it not matter? Like, if you could describe that.
well, I just I think um and it's at different points in my life where I've felt actually like where um I would look at the weekend, to relax and chill, and have actually a rest from work, or rest from, where I can spend some time, just kind of leisurely, doing less. Um, but I don't, I'm not going to grow that way, and and it's kind of what's led me to I mentioned at the start of this about leaving some of my vices. And really actually there are two things that I probably that I've cut out this year. Um, not completely, but basically you're talking like you know, considering regular use to, maybe only a few times this year, but drinking and cannabis. And they don't help me, you know, wake up at 5:30 in the morning and be, sharp and ready to kick ass. They don't allow me to focus on making the right decisions on the rest of today. So I don't know, like I don't look at myself like, hey, I'm better than anyone else because I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning to do a fucking podcast with Jay Doran. I'm better than myself a year ago. I'm better than myself 3 years ago. That's what I'm better than. And that doesn't make a difference because there's someone who woke up at 4:30 this morning and is doing actually a podcast with someone actually, Jay, as awesome as you are and as important as you are in my world, in your client's world, there's someone actually doing something with someone more
That's
important.
true.
And so I am not actually comparing myself to anyone else. I'm not comparing myself because, and also I also don't compare myself to the person next to who busted their ass with physical labor all week, and maybe makes like a fraction of what I do on an annual basis, but they are happy because they're just chilling out today. So I can't compare myself to
Mm.
anyone else because I just can compare myself to you know uh you know my prior asshole self, because if I'm not looking at my previous self as an asshole, I haven't improved.
Yeah, in the multiverse, Andre Berman and Durant that are more attractive, wealthier, up earlier, smarter, funnier. our meeting, doing the 700th podcast of the year already. They're not at like 83. They're at like 700 already in Q2.
Yeah.
Ah,
We have
and you're
another
over here
comma.
trying to get better than yesterday.
Yeah. That's it. That's all we could do. That's all we could focus on.
I do want to loop back to the conversation between accountability and responsibility, and really close on that and your thoughts. I said accountability is taken or given, right? Taken or given, top down, taken. Maybe they don't work here. Given, here's constructive feedback. Bottom up, uh, given. How honest can the people be? How honest do they feel? How safe do they feel to speak? Taken, they'll walk out, they'll leave, they'll check out mentally and not work. That's accountability. Responsibility is modeled. So you'll see these leadership structures that are just talking at their people all day long, and their behaviors aren't congruent with what they're saying. So the person in power is ability, their responsibility, their ability to respond, their ability to respond is modeled. It's modeled in their behavior. The people learn by watching them and working with them. They observe them. Responsibility is modeled. It's modeled in actions, words, and interactions. If that equation isn't at equilibrium, it's too much words, or too much actions and not enough explanations. It's an interaction involves the third part, the counterpart. So that add that, there's a the relationship in that. There's a relate, there's more than one person. There's a relationship. There's a relating. But the confusion between accountability and responsibility in our business culture is high. And I would argue that accountability is a consequence of responsibility. It's a consequence. It's like a symptom. It's like if our leadership is able to respond, if they're bought in, if they're modeling the behaviors, if they're in it to win it, if they're capable of burdening power and not betraying their people, the, there won't be a call to accountability. They won't need to be saying. It's always a red flag if a leader's always talking about accountability, accountability, accountability. They don't need to talk about it if they're responsible, because it's a consequence of their ability to respond to the challenges of growing the business. I just said a whole bunch of things, and we can unpack them over time. But the distinction between accountability and responsibility, I think, is an important distinction to be made and to be unpacked.
So where does, going back actually though to Christine's quote, in terms of standing up, um, standing alone. So the where does like the employee, um, you know,
Oh, that's good. An employee does that shit in their culture, they become the martyr. When
yeah,
the tyrant dies, their reign ends. When the martyr dies, their reign begins. Friedrich Nietzsche.
mm.
So you pull that shit in a company that doesn't have ownership and leadership capable of burdening that, you're gonna get destroyed. You're you're gonna get fired. You're gonna get lambasted. You're not gonna get fired. You're gonna get crucified. You're gonna get shunned. You're gonna get gossiped around. You're screwed. You're gonna have to become a consultant.
Yeah,
But it's damn good advice.
or create a mutiny, and create your and
Yeah, when you
create
better
your own
be
thing.
ready to take over that company.
Yeah,
Now, if you're an outsider, you better have enough capital to do that hostile takeover, buy that boards, or get get enough shares and put out a proxy statement and or argue with, to get put on the board and get that management out.
Or
Or let's just go, but if you do speak up, maybe it doesn't go to those extremes. Maybe how you say it matters. Maybe your tonality helps.
or,
Maybe you've listened. Go ahead. Sorry.
or sometimes it's just good to start fresh. Have the capital, take that vision, and just make a new, better, more improved
And
version
maybe
that.
you could be wrong.
And this
It's
is where
always a
we're
possibility.
and this is where having the the confidence to stand alone and to be wrong, to be wrong, and to know actually that that sometimes you are going to stand alone, and those you're going to stand with, maybe actually their initial, or their motives are flawed, and you can take a lesson that's, hey, listen, something. Sometimes you're going to stand alone. Sometimes you're going to stand with people who don't necessarily aren't in sync with who you were led to believe who they were, or who they became through somehow dilution of their motives, or I guess the pollution of from the power that they've obtained by achieving their high marks.
I do think that I think that power can absolutely change is oversimplified, I think, but change a person. Let's look at it like a thought experiment. Now I'm becoming known to have resources and influence, like let's just say capital, right?
Hmm.
I'm more likely to be robbed or my kids are more likely to be stolen. I'm more likely to be sued. Maybe I have been, and I am regularly. And what about the first handful of times? You know, that could jade me. Like as I climb, more untrustworthy people are attracted to me, which could make me less trustworthy, or sorry, trusting. And being trusting has a relationship with trustworthy. The less trusting I am, the more closed I am, the less of a listening, the more assumptions, the less grace. So the less trusting I am, the less trustworthy I'll eventually be. Eventually, because Nietzsche said it would be careful when staring into the abyss that the abyss doesn't stare back into you. Like, so the more trust I lose in the culture as I grow in power based on actual conflicts that are brought and evil that is attracted to me, I might lose my ability to trust in the pursuit of success and therefore become less trustworthy because being able to trust and being trustworthy, I think, have a relationship psychologically. And so the inevitability of of losing the very values that underlie the creation of value is is hot is natural. It's natural. Um, it's part of it. Never quite said it like that, but that if it's like if I feel powerless in resources and social standing, my power could come from God, like, and I'll use that very generally. Like, my power could come from
Higher power.
values, like something beyond. But when I become God-like, where there are people worshiping me, lying to me constantly, omitting, walking on eggshells, intentionally lying to try to steal my kids, or trip and fall in my parking lot, I might look down and say, I need to create hell for some of these idiots. you know um I'm not going to sacrifice my son for these idiots. you know I don't believe, I don't believe in these idiots. That's that trust piece. I've lost trust in people. Well, my ability to trust someone has a relationship with my trustworthiness. So over time, I lose my ability to be trusted as well. I'm now a schemer, reacting to the schemes of the world. I've lost my faith. I am not giving people the benefit of the doubt anymore. I am now this all powerful, all knowing, all seeing thing, which, if I have, you know, tremendous wealth and of relationships and resources, I am all knowing in a sense, because everyone's going to give me, I'm an information hub. I know what's going on at all times. I got the people in the organization telling me, I got my advisors telling me, I got my private investigator following you. Like, I know what's going on.
Hmm.
That is intoxicating power.
Yep. Yep.
And that can change someone. And such so subtly, they're like a boiling frog. They have no idea that they are now in control by power. They're being controlled by power. Like, and when I say they, it's like that is exactly what's happening to me and you and everybody listening to this that's pursuing power. That is pursuing. There's a tension between culture and power. And I'm trying to figure, what else am I going to do? The Culture Matters podcast. This is what we're doing. Trying to figure it out. How do we not lose what's good in the pursuit of what is evil?
Yeah.
you know,
Finding that balance. Finding that balance
what
of,
can be evil, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. How do we pursue the good in a world consumed by evil, by opportunity to undermine value?
Earning the trust, being trustworthy, being trusting, and not actually, reminding people that they need to trust you through fear.
Yeah. If if the distribution, if the equilibrium between customer choice and institution, uh, um, and the businesses, I guess, how do you, if the equilibrium between customer choice, the less choice customers have, in the longer term, the businesses will create less value, because through market competition, it forces innovation. It holds the businesses accountable to reinvest earnings, to come up with new ideas, to labor. If they're not doing that, because leaders are attracted to problems, followers are attracted to leaders. If times are easier, if we've created a monopoly, if we have a monopoly where there's no market competition,
Mhm.
in time, yes, we will make a significant amount of money for ourselves, like as people, as shareholders of of being in control of that business. But the long-term effect for the entire economy, including us, because we're a part of the economy, will be devastating because innovation value comes as a result of being held to account by customer competition, customers making choices based on information, data, optionality. It creates an accountability to the business to have to reinvest earnings and innovate and work essentially. And work is a spiritual act. It's it it's an investment of space time that never is given back. It's selfish, but it has a selfless nature to it because there's even though I'm doing this podcast so I could feel better about myself and gain power and shit, you're included. So there's value. And then the listeners get something for themselves. It's a selfish act that becomes altruistic. It's creating value, despite the reason I'm doing this at 5:30 in the morning is because of all the personal subjective reasons that are selfish to me.
which make it not altruistic.
It doesn't even need to be.
Yeah, yeah.
The altruism is a consequence of the narcissism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like that's the beauty of of economy, like
Yeah,
of open economy is
yeah.
where I'm going with this is the issue when customers, and this is relevant in the industry right now, when customers don't have a choice, they have less choice because the the businesses that are promoting choice, independent brokering, are so engrossed in an ideology, engrossed. That's a cultural monopoly that lowers innovation. The equilibrium is off.
Hmm.
The long-term consequences of that affect everyone.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason that the governments break up monopolies is because innovation is a consequence of organizations being held to account by customer choice. So competition creates customer choice, which has an impact on the pricing, the price and cost, which keeps everything in equilibrium, which ultimately benefits the customer, which is everybody. We're all the customer. So uh I didn't think we were gonna get into all that, but like that's important.
Yeah. Well, this is the difference between cults and culture. Cults and culture rich organizations.
It's a good
Where
point.
you have you have a cult. You become indoctrinated to believe something, whether it's because of your own detriment, whether because you're an employee and you have to, but you have to toe the line, because if you don't, you will be ostracized by your people, by the organization. Whereas in a culture rich company, you're doing it because you want to. You're doing it because you believe and trust your leadership. You feel like, see, that your leadership is trustworthy, and your leadership knows that they can trust you, because whether they're watching you and monitoring your every move or not, they know that they've shared the right values with you, and you are in lockstep with them as leaders.
Andrew, this we got to continue this responsibility, accountability breakdown, I think, in the future. What do you think?
I think so too. I think I need to understand better myself about accountability and responsibility. I don't fully understand it myself. And I would want to keep that. I want to keep this conversation going, so I could learn from it, and hopefully, there's others out there that are also learning as we are
I
sharing.
think it's fitting to add that um, the last 8 years of working in businesses around the culture has gotten me has it's taken 8 years to get to the point for me to verbalize what I'm saying right now. That's how obvious yet invisible this conversation is, like the distinction between accountability and responsibility. And I'm working on writing that for the CEO manual now to get clear on my thinking around it, right? Because spending the last 8 years in the field, in the trenches, and in the libraries essentially has brought me to this realization that I need to understand the distinction between accountability and responsibility better to better help the companies that we serve. So just we're all in the same boat. Like we're all students here. I'm trying to articulate it verbally and in the written form in a way that can be not only made aware and understood myself and conceptualized so that it could be practically deployed in businesses to make them more successful. So we're in the same boat. Maybe I'm one step ahead. That's it. So if I can get more clear for the next time we talk, I think we'll have an even better conversation. But I've been working on it for some time, and I would argue that before I even realized that I was working on it, and then I was like, oh, I really have to articulate this distinction as clearly as possible based on all the rooms and all the meetings and all these books that I actually think undermine this distinction and where I think it's backwards a lot.
Hmm.
The example would be when an organization, works on its values. If it's not a self-awareness exercise and it becomes a marketing tool, then there aren't values.
Mhm.
It's a self-awareness exercise. It's it's leadership looking at itself. Are we these things? And asking its people, how well are we doing these things? It's not telling its people, these are our values and this is how you need to act. That's called a dictatorship. That's a form of power enforcement. But an open society is going to have the values, and the people are going to judge, hey, are you leaders fit for this position based on your values? Oh, no. So we're voting you out. Right. Now, we may not be able to vote you out with our vote, but we could at least vote you out with our words like, hey, you're not living up. But in my company, if my company is where my people cannot tell me, hey, you're not living up because they're afraid of me, then I'm not a good leader. And I've lost myself to power. And I've watched this occur to, I would say, people that actually are good and want to be good. And how to get them unstuck is very vitally important in my view. How to get them unstuck, how to get the victim to be a leader and not you know a tyrant.
Hmm.
So anyway, we're learning together. And it's taken years to get. It's like, okay, as simply as possible. This is accountability and this is responsibility. Accountability is a consequence of responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond to the modeling of behaviors. Accountability is taken or given. And what does that mean for each party? Those right that are bottom up and those that are top down. And that ever evolving relationship is like, how can that be simply understood? And then of course it doesn't need to just be understood, it needs to be acted out. And the gulf between understanding and living is like two different universes. But in closing, did we accomplish anything today, or is this just a bunch of mental masturbation?
Uh yeah, I think we accomplished some things. I think first off that I need to understand accountability better and responsibility better. And I think that's um I think that's really of course uh, we accomplished getting a little free commercial for Adding Commas podcast coming to a podcasting platform near you. Uh, so, uh, um, and appreciate you pushing me to do that, pushing me actually saying, Andrew, you need to get out there and have more conversations with people and record those conversations. You know, my knowing you, Jay, has pushed me out of my comfort zone in so many ways, and that's definitely one of those public things that people have seen. So
Thanks.
yeah, thank
I
you.
got one quote to end the show. Here it is. Um, you are a terribly real thing in a terribly false world. And this, I believe, is the reason you are in so much pain. Friedrich Nietzsche. Please leave us a review of the Culture Matters podcast and get a life.